to the NPTE podcast, for physical therapists preparing to sit for the National Physical Therapy exam. From case studies to content review, we have you covered.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the NPTE podcast. This is Will Crane, your host. Thank you so much for joining me as we talk through the content you need in order to dominate on test day. So today our goal is to talk about the secrets to great flashcards and how to make good flashcards that will aid you in your long-term memory. But before we get to that, just a quick reminder of our crash course that we run every quarter before every test day. So this is like cramming, but way, way better, where we go through the big three systems, cardio, musculo, and neuro, one more time right before test day. As you recall, it's about 75% of the test is dedicated to cardio, musculo, and neuro. And in fact, almost half the test is just, almost half the test is just on neuro and musculo itself. So we spent a bunch of time on cardio, musculo, neuro. We have both a PTA and a PT crash course. So if you're involved in your program in some way, be sure to check that out. We do have group discounts if you can get 5 or more together. We've got pretty sweet discounts, and I think you'll enjoy that. But the goal of the crash course is just to go through those big three systems one more time. We tend, the way we've got it structured is that we go through content each week, plus we have a session dedicated to just questions and answers, meaning that we go through practice questions, talk through, not only what the correct answer is, but how to arrive at that answer. And granted, it is cramming. It is something that clearly you've had practice at, but the goal is to really fine-tune and hone those skills so that on test day there are no surprises. You can just walk in and have a fabulous experience. So that's the goal of the crash course. We run that, like I say, every single quarter. And so as I'm recording this, we're just about to head into the April crash course as we head into April 2023. But we will run this again, obviously, every quarter. So if you're involved in your class in any way, whether you're class president, faculty, whatever it is, be sure to check out or reach out to us at ptfinalexam.com/contact, where you can sign up for a group discount. Now, that group discount is for 5 or more students, and we give you a really sweet discount. So be sure to check that out, ptfinalexam.com/contact, so you can get in contact with us and get your sweet discount. So, all right, the goal today is to talk about flashcards. What makes a great flashcard and why are they so useful? We want to talk about some tips and really actionable items to make it much easier for you to make good flashcards. So I guess let's start first with just an example of what a poor flashcard would be. So a poor flashcard or a bad flashcard, this would be one that has too much on it. So for instance, I don't think anyone does this anymore, but like if you were to write a 5-paragraph essay on the back of a flashcard, it's not going to fit, it's not succinct, it's not brief, and certainly is not going to help you memorize a small bit or a topic for test day. Rather, the keys to a great flashcard, there are several keys. Now, number one is that they need to be brief. So brief but clear and enough information to flesh out the idea. So I guess the real key here is we're talking about making a flashcard of something that is a small enough bite of information so that as you look at it, it has distinct and concrete borders to it, I guess you could say. So for instance, one example would be, and this was an example I was trying to come up with for this podcast today, is, what is an example of a good flashcard? So one example of that would be like the grading of nerve injuries. So let's say you could write that on the front of the flashcard, say grading of nerve injuries. And on the back, there are 3 main grades. So this is obviously very distinct, very concrete, but 3 main grades of neuropraxia, axontomesis, and neurotomesis. Now, if you were just to write those 3, certainly that would be a sufficient flashcard to show the different types of grading of nerve injuries, the 3 different subtypes. But the other key is that it has to be enough information to at least flesh out the idea. And this is where it can be helpful to be colorful or visual. So as you consider what's colorful or visual, think about if you could draw, and you could draw a very brief schematic of the 3 nerve injuries. So neuropraxia, the first one, neuropraxia, I always remember this one. Someone told me this a long time ago. It said neuropraxia, it's coming backsia. So neuropraxia is a transient nerve injury, meaning that it's like your arm falls asleep, or your leg falls asleep, and then as soon as you stand up and walk around, or as soon as you move around away from the position, it does return, usually within minutes, possibly to hours, but it's very brief. Neuropraxia is transient, almost like a transient compression that once you release it, everything's good to go. So that's neuropraxia. And so if you were to draw this out, you just draw a line with a little pinch point. Then the next one, axontomesis. This is where the axon is preserved, but you have Wallerian degeneration. Well, what in the world is Wallerian degeneration? Well, Wallerian degeneration just means that everything downstream from the injury point dies. However, the axon is preserved. So it's not like a true cut. It's like a very severe compression or pinch that then results in nerve death downstream from the nerve, from the point of injury. So again, you could draw a very brief schematic of this, show the pinch point, and then skull and crossbones or something downstream. And then finally, the last one is called neurotomesis. So neurotomesis is when you have a true cut where the entire nerve has been severed. This is obviously the most severe. And again, you could just draw a very brief image or a schematic showing a total cut or scar of the nerve where nothing's coming back because you have totally cut it. And either that or it requires some type of surgical intervention to remove, or whatever it is extremely severe. So the key with a great flashcard is that it has to be brief, has to be simple enough, but the final key is just to have it in your own words. So how many times have I seen people do this where they copy out, just the paragraph out of the textbook, they do something, and clearly the textbook is a great resource and it has what you need, but it's got to be in your own words. And this is the part, and I talk about this in long-term memory aids, that as you have a bit of information, the only way to get it to actually stick long-term is to put it into your own words or your own framework. And in psychology, they call this a schema. A schema is just like a scheme. It's something that works in your brain or is connected to other material in your brain. And this is where you get that association. We talked about this in previous episodes, but you try to associate the content with something. Like, for instance, the little phrase I mentioned earlier, neuropraxia, it's coming backsia. It is extremely brief and obviously quite silly, but it's a good way to remember that neuropraxia is transient ischemia. So like for me, it happens when I talk on the phone too long. If I've got my arm up to my ear, then I get neuropraxia on my ulnar nerve. And as soon as I come out of the elbow flex position, it tends to return really quite quickly. But anyway, the point is that your flashcards have to be brief in your own words, and then have some type of either color or image or something that stimulates your mind in a way that is more than just the words on the page necessarily. And again, there's nothing wrong with just a text or a text version of a flashcard, but it does stick better if you were to draw a very brief schematic so that you could recognize it at an instant and have that whole deeper concept really fleshed out in your brain. So it's got to be clear, it's got to be simple, and then finally the last thing is to be randomizable. So to be able to take your flashcards and randomize the deck. And this randomization, this is something that really helps with long-term memory. Again, because as you randomize the content, you find that your brain has to work harder to find it, to pick it out, and this is what really leads to long-term memory retention. Now, clearly, when you're first learning it, you can't randomize everything, otherwise it just gets out of kilter. But farther down your studies, usually about a month to 2 months out, you can really start to randomize your content, randomize your practice questions, because this is what you'll experience on test day. That test day will inevitably be hundreds of practice questions of various topics, all randomized and randomly distributed and dropped right in your lap. And so you've got to get your brain to start working that way. And again, clearly you start in an organized fashion, but then as time goes on, you would add more and more randomization. So there you go. That is the secret to a great flashcard. Again, great flashcards are brief, in your own words, randomizable, have enough information to flesh out the idea. Obviously, an image or color can be very helpful here. And then using them. You've just got to use them. Got to refer to them frequently. Like when I was studying for the NPTE, I had a big old flashcard deck, and I would study on the bus. I would look at usually I'd make a flashcard based on a question that I had missed. So let's say I took a practice question and I got it incorrect. I would use that as the starting point for my flashcard to say, all right, I did not understand this information sufficiently, so therefore I need to make a quick flashcard. And as I did that, it made it much, much, much easier to get the information to stick long term and apply it to practice questions. So, all right, well, with that, we'll bring today to a conclusion. We'll go through a couple more of these study tips as we go through the podcast, but be sure to check out all of our other podcast episodes. You can find us, you find all of the cheat sheets and information we've got for you over at ptfinalexam.com/podcast, and that includes our free giveaway that's available just for a limited time. We've got a bunch of practice questions that we're giving away as a celebration for our 100th episode, which obviously is a few episodes ago. But be sure to check out our other episodes. And if you haven't yet, I know it only takes a moment, but I'd sure appreciate it. Just take a moment and leave us a 5-star review over on Google Play, Apple iTunes, Spotify, wherever it is that you're listening to this podcast. It only takes a moment, and it makes a world of difference as we are trying to get the word out and help people get ready for the NPTE, and I'd really appreciate it. So with that, we'll bring today to a conclusion. Thank you so much. As always, happy studying. Keep a grin on your chin. Will Crane fist pumps all around, and I'll catch you in the next episode. Thanks.
This podcast was sponsored by PT Final Exam, an awesome resource for NPTE preparation. From live courses to university cohorts, PT Final Exam has a package to suit everyone's needs. Head over to ptfinalexam.com to see the wide variety of NPTE preparation options.